There we go. Hey guys, hope everyone's doing alright. So yeah, we're back to regular streaming now, so it should be every couple of days. But yeah, so we got started obviously on the character groom 2 days ago. So I have done a little bit of work off stream, not on the character though. I've been primarily working on the monster, just because he required a fair bit more guide work just for kind of this area going into the curtains. Still not finished obviously, but it required a bit more guide work done there, and there was some weird funky stuff going on the top of the head. So I have got updated renders. And another thing I've been kind of figuring out is if I want to crop, if I want to kind of reduce the area that gets rendered. So what I mean by that is with our environment hidden, obviously we have got an environment blocked out, but with that hidden, currently this is how the character looks in screen. So I feel like having this much negative space here, it doesn't really do the characters much justice. So I thought about potentially, is this the one? Cropping it in a lot tighter. Maybe including, the legs of the character as well. I'm not entirely sure on that yet, but it might be worth maybe figuring out an environment that this can work in instead. Or obviously we can just do crop this in half and keep the paper that he's standing on, that sort of stuff. But yeah, that's something we'll figure out. Not in today's stream though. In today's stream, it's going to mainly continue working on character hair, do some maybe loose fibers, and hopefully get some time to groom the curtain on the box, which currently is just an end cloth mesh, nothing fancy going on there. But yeah, so I guess we should get our reference up actually. Let's get pure ref open. As always, if anyone has any questions, feel free to let me know. And let's get that. There we go. So I've got this guy back. And I'm going to put that on my right screen, so I have a bit more screen space. I'm also still trying to figure out how to get my room to echo less. Obviously now I've moved house, it's a little bit more echoey than I'm used to. I'm also just going to quickly close the curtain. 1 sec. There we go. So yeah, let's for now hide the monster. Get him out of there. I tend to keep the box visible just because it helps add a bit of context to the character. Although I do really want to kind of redo some of the cloth sim stuff here, like maybe sculpt the back or something. We'll see about that. But yeah, so I think the first thing we've got to do, or continue doing, really is guide work. So I'm just going to get straight into that. And then if anyone wants me to kind of jump ahead and do a bit of more node work or jump onto doing a bit more work on the strays, feel free to ask. I'll be happy to kind of go back to that. But let's just get this started. There we go. So yeah, the aim of today is just kind of getting the main aim is to get the guides kind of not finished by any stretch, but just in a more final state. Let's resample that. 16, that seems a bit high. 12. So a few of the things I've got to figure out is how do I want the hair to interact with this scarf? Because really, in theory, they would be pushed flat to the neck, but I kind of want to do stuff bunching out over it. I feel like it could look really interesting. So we'll kind of see how that ends up going. It might end up looking awful and I'll have to get rid of it, but for now, I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. So let's get a guide in there. Let's resample these. Also, if anyone's watching and happens to know how Yeti decides on curve counts when you create a guide, it'd be really cool to know. Because it feels like it's scale based. That's what it feels like anyway. It creates it based on segment length to begin with. Because in small scenes it always gives me too few guides, and in big scenes it always gives me too many. Let's get this guy, pull him in a bit. Obviously at this point we are pretty much ignoring the original mesh that we made for the hair and just kind of, you know, freestyling from there. Let's quickly check what's going on here. Cool. Yeah, so like this looks like it's really low CV count, which is super strange. If I remember correctly, this scene is modeled to real scale, but that is real scale for a toy, so I guess it would be a bit small. Also, this needs to gain some volume, I think. These guides are different lengths, aren't they? Let's just cut one of these a bit shorter. Again, that's feeling a bit better. Yeah, so what I wanted for the back, something I kind of discussed in the last stream, is I kind of want all the ends of the hair to kind of meet, so it's like a shelf almost of the tips of hair, because that could give a really cool bristly effect if I turn off the taper of the hair. Or remove growth variation, I guess is the way that Yeti handles it, which I'm still not really too keen on. It'd be nice if there was a cut modifier, but I'm sure there's a way to do it with a group node or something. Let's swirl him that way. That guy feels a bit weird. Could be cool. Just bunch the hair up. Have it all collect in a point. Something I quite like to do in my grooms is just have like a collection of guides, like a small group of them that all form a clump shape. I find it can give really nice variation to grooms. And that guide's bothering me a bit. There we go. That bottom guide's a bit boring from the top view. Yeah, like whenever you do this sort of like kind of clumped guide shape thing that I'm doing now, you always need to make sure it looks good from pretty much every angle, because whatever shape you're creating with these will get captured just because of the way interpolation is. So you need to always make sure that it looks cool, or at least has some kind of interesting shape to it for most angles. Can't guarantee every angle to look good, obviously, but give it your best anyway. And this guide, I don't want him to follow, so he'll do his own thing. Let's curl these a bit more intensely. Hey Aaron, how's it going, man? One thing I'm wondering is if there's any playlists of like music that's not banned to stream. Because I do want to kind of put background audio, because obviously I know there's quite long periods of silence sometimes, but at the same time I don't want to use a playlist that claims to be copyright free and then a month after have like 10 or 20 fucking videos muted. Because that would be great. Having everything muted. If anyone knows of any like genuinely royalty free or copyright free playlists, let me know. And if anyone suggests classical because it's in public domain, I will tell you to fuck off. Let's have him try to catch this guy. Increase these counts actually. 16 is a little bit, 12 is a little bit too long. Search YouTube for common creative music. Cool. Yeah, I'll have to see if there's a way for me to get it set up so that it puts it in the background of the video. Although I guess I'm kind of fucked if I don't want to play it over the microphone because I imagine that being really obnoxious. Should he just follow the same shape? Feels a bit boring. Might be what he needs to do though. Let's increase the length slightly. I said slightly. Cut you to about there. Rebuild. Sometimes it's quicker just to overscale it and then cut it down to the length you want than it is to actually just like correctly get the length and in the map, I mean. Okay, so now I can just cut this. It'll be roughly the right length. There we go. That guide feels wait, when did that happen? These guides are fucked. I haven't been sculpting. No? Weird. Okay, let's do it one at a time then. I must have accidentally grabbed them. Something like that will do for you. One nice thing in Yeti I do like to take advantage of sometimes is the masking tool. So when you hold control, it operates based on the same method that the brush itself uses to grab hairs. So if you're using something like the sculpt tool where it's screen space, it will grab anything at any depth, just like that. But if you're using something like the comb tool, it does it based on the root, so you can't select out here. It makes it really easy to mask guides that you want to mask. So sometimes I'll just switch over to the comb just to mask something and then switch back. I find it really, really helpful. It definitely speeds up the process of masking stuff because the last thing you want to do is always having to be like really precisely masking stuff because that can take a really long time. I also want to figure out how to use the scale tool properly. As far as I'm aware, this stuff applies to every brush. That's too sensitive. Oh, that's a clumping tool as well. really cool to speak to some Peregrine lab devs at some point and just suggest stuff. So I feel like Yeti, like the more I've used it, the more I've realised it's so many features, so many quite subtle features away from being my favourite tool. Because currently XGen is still my favourite tool. Pipeline, Yeti absolutely wins. Like it's easy, but for actual grooming, Yeti there's a lot of things that don't quite act how you'd expect and require weird workflows to get around. So it's just like the overall process is great, and I think is one of the strongest out there. So it'd be really cool to kind of have the opportunity to kind of, you know, put out what I think would help, at least from a, you know, someone who's new to Yeti perspective. But you know, there is a reason that Yeti has a bad reputation for digital grooms. Something like, if I don't know, that's too much. I think in the next stream as well, we'll try to get some textures on the hair. Be nice to do. I'll have to reactivate my Mari before I do that. Or I can just use Substance. Painter, that is, not Designer. Don't like Substance Designer, to be honest. Well, I could do it procedurally. We don't need anything too precise for this character. After all, his hair is primarily based on this puppet, so. Let's resample that. So, what are we doing with the guides up here? I could do something a bit weird in this area, could be fun. Just have the hairs do like something that makes no sense, and see how the silhouette catches it. Not too keen on that though. Nah, that won't work. Let's just sweep it back in. Just bring that down a bit. I think like one small thing that should be relatively easy to implement is something I complained about in the last stream, is like how the brush, because it operates obviously on the CVs, when you've got more CVs on a guide, it kind of it gets pulled around a lot faster, because obviously you've got more points to interact with, so it makes perfect sense, but it's not friendly to use. I feel like one simple thing they could do is literally just like divide your brush strength by the number of CVs the curve has. May not be ideal when you're doing multiple curves at the same time, but I feel like it could be a little checkbox or something. And that would just make the brush behavior like consistent, even when you got multiple guides, or like, you know, multiple amounts of CVs and that sort of stuff. Because with the current behavior, if you've got guides that are at different CV densities, you can very quickly end up with a brush that's kind of pushing some hairs more than others, and then the hair just kind of naturally parts because of it, which isn't really a great behavior, because it means you can't like sculpt en masse without having issues. Granted, there's an argument to be made that your guys should all have the same CV count, but I don't really believe in that, to be honest. So we're gonna have to definitely pick favorites in this area. Let's go with you. Resample. Maybe I can change the segment length, see if that is the default. Let's go 0.2. I guess 0.3 will do. If the next guide that we generate is smoother, then that's what it uses by default, which would be good to know. Let's just grab you. That'll do. So, no, it's not smooth. Okay, so that's not how it functions. Good to know. I feel like I'm making these guides a bit too sleek considering the reference is just like a complete fucking mess. I need to go in and redo these guides, but with a bit more kind of fun to them. I'm gonna have to resample all these. Go even higher CV count than you. Resample, just to get that curl at the end looking a bit better. Cool, let's get a guide here just to force a bit of a change. God, that's getting really broken up. I think that min segments might have an effect. So that's at 18. What am I doing right now? That shape is awful. Let's step that down to 18. We should probably reduce that as well to like 12 or something. Go. This guide's giving me more trouble than it should. So let's get a guide in there. No, it's still not changing the CV count. Weird. Is that hair a bit short? Or is this hair a bit long? I think that hair's a bit long. Just get him cut a bit shorter. That works. We can obviously do a pass with the length attribute to make sure all of these are consistent. Just blur it or something, and then just resculpt wherever it needs it. So we haven't got too far with the guides yet, so there'll be one of those things that either blockout guides will be all we need, so it ends up being left in a state like this, or I'll want to commit to actually making good guides, because I'm really, really anal about guide work. I want to make sure it's always looking good. So one of the things I try to teach beginners is like, your guide work is the most important aspect of a groom. So if your guide work looks great, you have to do barely any work for your actual groom to look good. Whereas if your guide work is a bit shit, then chances are your groom's going to be a bit shit as well. No exceptions, there are hairstyles who can get away with bad guide work. I'd say afros are probably pretty good for that, in terms of like, you don't need incredible guide work because the amount of work the modifiers do is insane. But for something like, and this guy's on the edge where his hair is very broken up, so we can probably get away with pretty shoddy guide work, but we'll see. It's really inconsistent and patchy back here. One nice thing actually with Yetis, because you can do attribute paints, you can use it as a way to see the roots of all your guides. So we can look at this and be like, okay, well, where's the biggest empty patch? We can see this bit. Where else? We've got a big empty patch here, decent sized one here. Having these kind of dots at the roots is actually really helpful for that. It's one of those small things that it wasn't what it's intended for, but it's helpful for it anyway, so no point complaining. These guides here are all too similar in shape. So there's the other gap. Let's get something in there. Resample. Okay, there is a dot there. So does anyone watching have any questions at all? Seems like quite a quiet stream today. Let's get that more appealing. And what else do we need? There was an area over here, wasn't there? Yeah, here. That definitely needs another guide. Let's see how that looks. Definitely more interesting than it was last time. This area is not working for me. Oh, how's the hair going? Oh, that's an issue. What is Siri trying to... No. Bad Siri. What do you think about Yeti compared to XGen? So, it depends on the context. If you're talking about digitable grooms, XGen all day. If you're talking about creature grooms, I'd say Yeti wins out there. Feathers, Yeti wins out. Pipeline, Yeti wins out. General usability, XGen, at least for me, wins out, although I know a lot of people would disagree with XGen being more usable. It depends entirely on what kind of metric you're judging it by. Oh, that's my preference. Okay. So, yeah, definitely pipeline Yeti. I don't think is really disputable. The pipeline for it is so easy. Let's edit groom. I was able to learn the Yeti pipeline for a project like as I did the project, and it didn't backfire, which goes to say something, I think, in terms of how easy it is to kind of get it working. So my first time using Yeti professionally was literally having to kind of like somewhat manage a project pipeline with it. So it's just like, it was a lot of stress, but yeah, Yeti made it a lot more easy than something like XGen would have. That's for sure. XGen would have crucified me if my first time using it was on the project. I think I needed a guide in there, don't I? Resample you, and let's just have these stay a bit flatter. Yeah, I do want to do a project at some point with a full like digidouble with Yeti, just to kind of see how it goes, because it is not good for that sort of stuff. But I feel like what Yeti needs is someone kind of doing a lot of digidouble stuff in public to kind of highlight what's wrong. Granted, someone like that probably exists, I just don't know who yet. Because all the Yeti stuff online is about feathers or creatures, which, to be fair, is what Yeti's really good at. Ever got a chance to do CFX? Not sure if Yeti or XGen are used. I think it's more NHair. Yeah, I mean, so XGen uses NHair, is the main thing for that. Yeti has its own simulation tools, but you can use NHair as well. And NHair, the thing with that is it's surprisingly one of the faster kind of tools out there. Until I think Vellum's slightly faster now, but that's pretty recent. NHair's ancient. NHair is actually older than me doing this stuff. As in older than, since I started CG. NHair already existed. It's not older than me, at least I hope not. I wonder what the oldest CG technique is that's still like actively used, or CG tool even. 25, there has to be at least one tool that exists that is still popular despite being older. I mean, hell, headless UV layout looks that way sometimes. This is either going to look really bad or really interesting. I'm edging towards really bad, but we'll see. I think whatever this guide is doing is what will tie it, so I think it needs to pull apart. So like it goes to follow it and then falls off away from it. So the most important aspect of, not the most important aspect, important aspect of CG work is context. So like you can make almost anything work if you have things around it that give it a reason to work. I mean, there's a guitar player called Guthrie Govan, or whatever it is, and he's amazing. But there's a sentence he said that kind of sticks with me through one, guitar playing, and two, like actual CG work, which is at least on a guitar, it's an instrument where you can hit the wrong note, but if you do it with enough conviction, it will work in the song. And he's like, I feel like the same thing applies to just general artwork. It's like, you can do something that's objectively wrong, but subjectively in the context of the work it's in, can look quite good. I mean, there's loads of examples of comic book art where poses are absolutely impossible and would break the back of the person doing them, but they look fucking cool, and because of the way that the artwork is done, it works anyway. So there's one example, I guess, but that's off the top of my head. It's probably not the best example. We're gonna need a guide down here. In fact, no we're not. Let's see what interpolation on its own does. I think the reason for all this stuff up here is the mask for the hair is actually bigger than the hairline. The hairline is in the wrong place even. We're gonna need a guide in there. This will be the last guide I do, at least for this, for a little while, because I don't want to spend the entire stream doing guide work. I'd like to do some more interesting stuff. Let's just get a guide there. Resample you, and what should we do with this? Because we can do something interesting with them. because it won't grab that much hair. Like we could do something like that. Let's not curl it out, let's curl it in. Everything else is curling out. How can we make this work? Something like that maybe? Flatten him down because he's coming out on top of the hat. To make that work, he needs to pull in more. How will that look? Because he's not going to grab that much hair, so we can do like stuff with him that's fun. Yeah, see, he just like grabs this clump. It might look really bad. I've never tested the performance of this actually. Let me just try. I'm going to alt save. Cool. Edit groom, tool settings. That's actually not bad performance. That looks a lot more interesting. Let's get a little stray clump like flicking out over everything. I love that sort of stuff in grooms. It makes them look so much more interesting. There we go. This is the sort of stuff that I find like makes grooms look more professional. I know it's I'm probably making a bigger deal of it than it actually is, but like this sort of stuff where you just have one clump that's just doing something on its own that looks kind of cool. Like the issue with a lot of beginner work in my mind is that all of it looks the same. Like it's always a very sleek or overly clumpy. Like the hair is like one note. Like the entire groom has one specific texture to it, and then the rest of it has nothing else going on. Whereas like more professional looking grooms, normally you tend to find there's areas that feel softer, there's areas that feel wet, like more wet, there's other areas that feel really chaotic. Like the best groom artists normally have that in their work. It's something I try to get in all mine. I don't always succeed, but it's something that I've noticed quite a few times is like it really gives away basic grooms. So it'd be something that's good to kind of get in. I feel like we should kind of replicate something like this on that side, not symmetrically, but just have something. Because one of the issues in our render is that this area looks too consistent, I guess. So let's just get that. And let's add about there. And I guess what we can do for him, to make him interesting, is have come out, fall under, and tuck back in. So it's not doing quite what this is doing, this is staying out. This is like coming out and over, and then going inside. Not pushing it enough, I think. But yeah, like this sort of stuff is, and I guess one example of like where I've put it in my work and it makes a huge difference is the Dragon Boy groom that I did ages ago. So he was actually my first stream series. So his groom looked aggressively average up until I did the stray clumps groom, like the separate one that was, you know, hand placed clumps. And it makes the groom look so much better than it actually is. Like it looks a lot better than it deserves to, simply because it's got those hand placed clumps that just kind of break things up and make it a bit less like everything else you see online. There we go. That might be parted a bit much actually. As in like I need to pull it in. Because I don't want it to sit out. I don't want it to just be the same as this guy. Where's my tool? There it is. So let's just pull that in a bit. There we go. Just resample that. Let's resample it to a lower count. Something that can be really helpful to do is resample things to a low count and then resample them back up to a high count. It basically just smooths the hair out, which is really, really, really tricky to do with actual guide tools sometimes. I know there is a smooth tool in Yeti, but it doesn't really work the way I'd expect it to. So I tend to avoid it. I'm really picky with tools. If they don't work the exact way I expect, I just don't use them. So one of the things we're going to have to capture is, because this guy is trying to look so bristly, we don't have it in this reference, but something I'd really love to do is get some of those really thick angular strays in the groom, and also get some that kind of dropped out onto his clothes, because they feel like they're really out of place and heavy. And to be honest, I'm not entirely sure it's supposed to be a hair. I feel like it's a stray stitch from the burlap that it's stitched onto, but I kind of want to get that in there anyway. So one thing we found out in the last stream is that Yeti smooths your hair curves, and there's fuck all you can do about it. So I've got a few options, but one of the things I'm thinking of doing, and something that would be, I guess, a nice little bonus thing to show, is you can load NURBS curves into Yeti and render those as hairs. So you can actually load it into your Yeti graph and apply noises and that sort of stuff to it. So what I can do is create this sort of curve, then oversample it. Like, I mean, I could do that, you know, with a manual groom as well, but I prefer to do it with curves because it gives me more freedom. But I could oversample it so it starts as a linear curve with 4 points and then gets resampled with absolutely no interpolation to like 30 CVs. So then when Yeti tries to smooth it out, it can't, because it's already like locked into that shape. And doing it in that method as well allows me to put the hairs anywhere. Like, you don't have to be on the scalp if they're on a hair, or if they're on a NURBS curve. So I can just kind of drop them around and put one on his shoulder, put one like kind of wrapped into his scarf, maybe put one poking out the hat, you know, that sort of stuff. It kind of gives a little bit more personality. Although it does involve me making NURBS curves like completely raw, which I suck with the NURBS curves tools. So we'll have to see how that goes. But I guess we should get started on that, because that'd be quite a bit of fun to do. So I'm just going to start by creating a, there's our first hurdle. Let's create a NURBS curve. So curve tools, CV curve. Something like that. Control vertex. And since I want these to be really angular, what I can do now is rebuild this. Curves, rebuild, but rebuild it to a linearity of 1, which I believe stops it from smoothing. So it doesn't even try to smooth the curve. I'm just going to lock that in. In fact, I should probably just set this. There we go. So I'm just going to keep this up. I'm going to put this on my other screen. But what I can do now is just directly manipulate the points and render this as is, pretty much. So let's try to get some interesting shapes. Not like that though. Modify, set to pivot. And then which one's the first CV? It's this one, right? How do I... That's not doing what I expected it to do, but okay. Just manually move it to roughly the right place. It doesn't have to be perfect, because again, it doesn't even have to be touching the skin. There we go. So let's just get this. And for the sake of a test, we'll just render that like as is. Fine, let's just keep it completely out here. So this is going to be our first curve. Let's just make this extra to see if it smooths it, because if it doesn't smooth it, then we can, you know, just work however we want. If it does smooth it, then we'll have to rebuild it to way more CVs, but linear. So let's go create sets, and this one we're going to call, wait, what's grass set? I don't remember making that. So this one will be fur head strays, a stray CRV set. And all I can do, or what I can do now, is just kind of drag these hairs in. So now let's select this guy. and go to graph. In fact, something I need to do while I remember is set you. That's already set. Cool. So now we'll go input guide sets. We'll add this curve set. Then go into, oh, where is it? Disappointing. Let's go Yeti graph editor. And we can hide that. So grab this guy, which obviously already has like a ton of stuff going on. These are our fixed trays. So what we can do now is bring in another input, and this one will bring in guide sets. So let's go guides, and then what we can do from there is create a convert, connect that to the mesh, and then convert strands to fibers, and that creates a hair which follows the CVs of that curve. So now we can merge that in, and let's see if it, well, we should create a width first. So let's create a width. Set this to be, in fact, we should probably copy paste the really thick one, right? That's a Scrabble. I think that's the chunky one. These both the same? They are the same, so why am I doing that? 1 second. Okay, we can simplify this graph a little bit. So we should create a merge here. Merge these two together, then put that width. And then merge that. So let's grab you, go there, delete you because we don't need you anymore. And then we can get rid of that width. Because if they're the same width, there's no reason not to, right? Which, for the record, means we can also merge in this guy. But I think I'll want to give it its own width. So let's just create this width. But we'll copy paste this. Then let's just grab that. I'm just going to chunk that up a little bit. Then we'll create another merge after this guy. Cool. So now when we hide that curve, we just have a floating hat. So let's see if that will render the way we want it to. I'm just going to save. If that renders the way we want, then great. If it doesn't, then I'm going to have to resample it to a higher curve count, or a higher CV count. I keep saying curve count. Let's get you, full screen you, and please don't crash. Come on. That's a fun one. Oh yeah, my camera's fucked. For whatever reason, my perspective camera did this in the attributes for Arnold, but it's just lost loads of the attributes. So I'm gonna have to create a new camera, I think. Yeah, let's create a new perspective. Set the focal length to be 120, so it's the same as the other one, and then just not fuck about with anything else. So let's get that set to shape 2. So it renders exactly as we put it, which is nice. So yeah, now we can just go in and do whatever the fuck we want. One thing I will do is I'll resample it to a high CV count anyway, because then I can add like subtle frizzy scraggles to it. But this gives me like so much artist control. I can do whatever I want with these. And the nice thing is I can just duplicate the curve. Like, there's no special treatment for these. So if I just duplicate that and move it, we now have 2 hairs. As long as it's in that set, it will get picked up. So let's delete that. I will hide this room while I work and show this instead. So yeah, let's start getting that placed around. So the first thing I'll do is pay homage to my reference by exactly copying the hair that kind of caused me to do this, which is this guy. So I'm going to have something poke out really vertically and do this kind of like crescent moon type thing. I always like to kind of call back to references by doing, like, mimicking one thing exactly. For some reason, I just really enjoy doing that. So if I just grab a hair, like in there, I can't do the exact same shape because there's a hat in the way, but if I just like grab this, then let's do something like, delete that CV. That was actually a lot straighter. And then to make it work from a few different angles, let's just spend a little bit of time prettying that up. This doesn't really make sense, does it? Like the current layout of it. So let's grab these. That's going to look really boring from this angle though, so let's just grab you, grab these two. And then let's just shrink that down a little bit. There we go. So that would be the homage curve. So now we can just go around and lay some hairs on him. I will need to get a bit of randomness in this, I think. It also will take a few passes to kind of compensate for displacement, because although the displacement is set up to not inflate too badly, it will still be a slightly different shape from the mesh that I'm modeling to. I'm not going to do too many of these. The point of this sort of stuff is subtlety. If it's too in your face, it just looks like you're trying too hard, which is always sad to see. Let's have it flick up a little bit. And this one we're going to rebuild. Let me just test the rebuild. If I was to rebuild this to, let's say, 50, does it keep the same shape? Yes, okay, cool. So I can do that. But in this case, I do want it to be smooth. So let's go with cubic and set that to 8 CVs. So when I say things like set it to cubic, I'm just talking about the degree, yeah? That's just a level of smoothness. This is the way I think of it, is like how many points is it consider when it's smoothing. So when you set this to linear, it doesn't consider any points other than the one you've placed, so it can't smooth it. If you use this one, it considers the point you've just created and the point it came from. So it tries to smooth that. And then I think this is where it starts to consider, like, you know, past and future sort of shit. I mean, obviously that's not what it's actually doing, but that's the way I think of it. So bigger number equals more smooth. So let's just get this. I feel like it doesn't make much sense for it to be under the scarf, right? That shape doesn't make too much sense, but we'll see how that works. And what we can do after we've done that is, we don't need Arnold, we need this guy. What we can do at this point is just add a quick scraggle. And that will just break up the shapes I've given it. In the case of this one that's low CV count, it can't do much, which is a good thing. But in the case of this one that's high CV count, it can actually do quite a lot. Although I guess it's going to struggle with that CV count. So let's, for science, let's rebuild this while Yeti's on it and just see what happens. So let's go, where are you? Rebuild. Set this to like 50 and apply. Okay, so nothing happens live anyway. Well, this one's getting rebuilt too. If that renders fucking differently, I'm going to be so upset. So we need to make that subtle. So I only wanted to very mildly break up the shape that already exists. Just because humans are shit at making things look natural, so doing things like this just allow it to look a bit more natural. So if we do a test render of that, to see if it's too subtle or not subtle enough, or if it looks generally bad. Let's unhide the lights, that'll help. Ooh. He's a bit too thick, isn't he? Oh, yeah, they're way too thick. Okay, so let's just fix that now. So let's just go into that width. Update full scene. Update full scene is overkill, but I always prefer to do it anyway as a safety. I know it's late, Aaron, but I've used Yeti in Action Major Production. Yeti Action and Major in production. For CFX, depends on the shot. What do you mean by and major? Is that just a little typo, or do I not know of a software? And also, welcome to the stream, Josh. I don't think I've seen your username before. I feel like one as simple as Josh would be easy enough to remember, so I have a feeling you've not been here before. So this width is working okay. The hairs feel a bit smooth. So I might have to, I mean, one thing you can do is convert Yeti directly back into Maya curves. So I could, oh, you meant in here, okay. Yeah, like, I could put noises on these, convert them back to curves, and just pick and choose if I want the noises or not. I feel like that could work better. We just need to get I think, one more hair somewhere. Although, am I trying too hard? Do I just need to, should I just leave it as the one hair, which is actually intersecting with the mesh? I'll need to fix that. Because doing that already adds, you know, the whole thing that I did that for, which is to say this hair can fall out. It's not perfectly built in, and that achieves that. So if I'm adding more, it's just drawing attention to it, which I don't necessarily want to do. That's something as well that I find I used to do all the time, which is like if you're adding something and you do it in a way where it draws attention to itself, you're not trying to make something that looks good, you're trying to show that you can do something, which is irrelevant, to be honest. It's a trap I used to fall into. I feel like it's quite an easy trap to fall into, especially when you're like new or you're trying to get a job or something. Like, it's easy to kind of draw into it. The biggest culprit of that is fingerprints. Fucking fingerprints everywhere on my old work. And it's just because I found the fucking fingerprint brush in Mari and just started adding these cool details to all my work. It's actually just a giant thumbprint that was way too big and way too obvious to ever be natural. It's like everyone who ever handled my props had their hands in bacon grease before touching them. It was mental. I think this is working pretty well. Oh, I never realised the light is breaking through that. It's kind of cool. So we need a bit more interest here, don't we? I could kind of start adding a few of these that kind of break up the shapes a little bit. So maybe not doing loads that have fallen out. Maybe make this one a little bit longer. Just have it reach onto the scarf a little bit. And then the rest of them I'll do in the hair to get like specific shapes. I think that will work a little bit better. So let's do that. So I kind of want to reduce that scraggle as well. So set that to 3 or 2 even. Control vertex. Let's definitely rebuild that curve. Cool. Curves, rebuild. Where did it go? There it is. So let's rebuild that down to something sensible like 18. There we go. It's human controllable now. Just bring that up. Let's grab you, bring you there. Let's have it kind of, you know, just about hanging onto that thing. And let's just do something like that. Break it a little bit. And then wonder what I need to do to get these to refresh properly. Yeah, there we go. I guess I could do it without the noise actually. Let's do that. So start getting more curves in there. And once I've placed all these curves, I can, what is it I want to go back to? I can work a little bit more on the feeling of the hair. Do a bit more modifier work. Also, let's go with this. And temporarily hide you. So Josh, what's your favourite tool to work with then? Like, are you a Grim artist? Are you CFX artist? Generalist even? And what sort of stuff is it you like to do? Something like that could look cool. I'm gonna add one up here somewhere. Like there maybe. Let's see how that looks. It might be a bit too much to have the one out coming out of his hat. Let's do a quick render of that. See how it looks. Well, let's render it from the distance that we're usually rendering. So we'll be doing like obviously a series of close-ups for this project as well. So let's get that. Maximize you. I also need to do the groom on the curtain for the box. Alex CGR, I have 4 gigs of VRAM. Is that enough rendering GPU in my? Probably not, to be honest. Oh wait, 4 gigs of VRAM. For a second I was thinking 4 gigs of RAM. VRAM probably still not great, to be honest, but you can. It depends on it. It's less about what you're using and more about what you're rendering. If you're trying to do like giant, like big set pieces with loads of really cool effects and cloth sims, then obviously you won't be able to do it on 4 gig of VRAM. If you're trying to do a simple scene with a little bit of, I mean, it depends also on what you're rendering in. If you're rendering with Redshift, then there's no real issue. It'll be a bit slow, but you could render with that amount of VRAM. I wouldn't recommend it though. This helps. I like this hair, and that hair, you can stay, I think. Yeah, I quite like what these have done. I need to fix the shape of this guy, but adding those strays has helped a bit, I think. Rendering this with some nice depth of field on it will help a lot. So, curtain, that's the next thing we need to do. We also need to fix this disconnect at some point, but that can wait, I guess. Let's just quickly like really sample this bit. I'm going to do some shading work on the hair as well. I can't decide if I want to make it desaturated or if I want to actually match this guy. So obviously, like with him, it's more desaturated than his skin, which makes it kind of cool. But my character's already pretty desaturated for the most part, so I don't know if making it more desaturated helps. I also kind of want to get some strays in there for the burlap. Like you can just about see the net that the scalp's on, because this is like one of those rare projects where actually I want the scalp to be visible. I want it to read as a separate thing. So I did it like a piece of cloth that renders as burlap. But I feel like we need some frayed edges on that to make it really sell. Also this area is dead to me. Like that silhouette is awful. We'll fix that and then we'll figure out what to move on to. In fact, yeah, we'll fix this silhouette because that is really dull, and then we'll move on to the curtain, which I need to figure out what the style I want this to be. Do I want it to be slick like satin, or do I want it to be kind of this sort of stuff, or let's see. But first, kill that, move him back onto the screen. I'm getting Breaking Bad, but when I zoom in too much, I'm getting Breaking Bad vibes from this guy. It's like the worst fan art of Walter White. So, what was I gonna do? Oh yeah, fix the silhouette. So, it could be as simple as adding a guide in here and just pulling it up. So let's do that. I'm gonna try grooming, just because I still want to test the performance of this. I'm gonna try grooming with the hair visible. So let's try to add a guide. Add a guide in here. The performance is pretty decent for this. I mean, it is a pretty simple character. Well, it's pretty simple groom even. Nothing too complex going on yet. Yet being a keyword. I will revisit it at some point and really start to detail it. But for now, it's a little bit pointlessly slow for what I'm doing. So I'll just hide this. And let's just get this working on its own first. So even doing something like that might be enough to fix it, but just to kind of help it along, I'm going to do some stuff here too. So let's just flick that this way, have you do that. And then let's get another guide in there. So this is an area where I'm just gonna take it crazy and see what happens. It might look awful, might not. Because one of the areas that I said I wanted to kind of somewhat capture is this area back here, where the hair is just completely fucked. And I think that'd be quite fun to do. I mean, the hair in general on this guy is a lot less neat than what I've got. But it's because I don't want to perfectly match it. I'm just using it for the general style, like how the hair should feel in the end. Like, what's it made of, how does it shade, all that sort of stuff. And the strays are the main thing. They look beautiful in that reference. I kind of want to find out who made that doll. Well, actually, I say that because I'm a fucking idiot. It's right there. So I have a feeling if I search this, I'll get the creators. So I'll definitely do that at some point because this is really cool. So let's see how bad this looks. Ooh. Maybe a bit too bad. I think if we tame it a little bit, I'm not going to tame these guys, I'm just going to tame the area around it. So if we add a guide here and have him play nicely, so have him kind of go down. As I was saying earlier, you can make things that are way too much feel more believable if all around them you know do stuff specifically to make them work. Specifically, even not specifically. So if we do something like that, have the hair get pushed away from this area because it's clearly crazy, but then have it kind of neatly go back to where it should be, like whoop. And then we'll need another guy down here somewhere, so let's just go there. Rebuild this. My voice feels like it's going croakier at the moment. Not good. Should probably go grab a drink. Let's do something like that. I just have this area feel a bit more neat. That means that the guides above it are doing all this crazy shit, but then the hair settles, it's not doing it forever. So that feels so much nicer to me. So let's do a test render of that, and then I'll move on to the curtain thing. So that'll feel a lot more interesting, I think. Save the scene. We're almost at scene 100. Almost time to celebrate. So this will look way less boring this time, hopefully. Hey Kosi, how you doing, man? Just let it do at least 2 passes. In fact, while this renders, I might run and grab a drink. So I'll be gone for like a minute, but I'm back in, well, a minute. I'll leave this rendering in the background. I guess we should give it a bit more screen space while we do so. Cool. I'll be back in a moment, guys. being in a bigger house is nice, but at the same time the convenience of having the kitchen just a few steps away from where I work is missed. Yeah, that looks a lot more interesting. It doesn't look great, but it looks better. It feels like it's too smoothed out. I feel like we need a few more guys just to really force that shape to just stay at its full craziness. It's just kind of like going like straight back into a normal shape. Not sure. Definitely feels a bit off. Is it a silhouette issue maybe? Having the hat be completely overtaken by the hair. I don't think that's the issue, but I mean it could be. There's nothing stopping it from being the issue. We also need something going on here. I think adding another stray that just kind of goes over these. Maybe another one next to this guy that just folds over. Let's force these shapes with a few more guides and get that stray in there. And then we'll move on to the thing with the stuff. So let's grab, let's turn you off, let's grab you, duplicate that, move it up a bit so it's not coming from the exact same spot, move it back a bit. Let's just push and pull it around until it's doing what we want, then we'll rebuild it and worry about what, you know, if it's in any good shape or not. Do something like definitely have to rebuild this curve. I'm kind of liking letting the curve get fucked up though, because it kind of helps make things feel more natural. Because again, like the thing I always repeat of humans being really shit at making things look natural, it's stuff like this where it's actually kind of beneficial is to just have the curve just get completely broken apart. Because I'm not controlling the way that this gets all kinked up from using soft select in a bad way. I'm not controlling that in the slightest, but it will feel probably more natural than if I was to actually try. I am going to sort out this guide as well because he's looking a bit off. Edit, tool, grab you, go to you, and then I need to move on to this area. So, let's go. This needs pulling in, doesn't it? That's all it really needs. It doesn't need any like cool treatment. It just needs to be simpler. Maybe something like that. Maybe actually having it come more in line with that guy. Cool. So, now let's try to get this bit to really sell. So let's get you. Resample and just have that match. So that just encourages more hairs to kind of clump it to there. I know that Yeti does have tools for having guides have more or less influence, but it's not visual. I prefer to work in a way like this where you can visually see that I'm forcing a shape. Like someone else could pick up my groom and instantly know what I'm trying to do here. Assuming they know the technique itself, which is pretty common. Not everyone likes this technique because it is a bit intensive sometimes. Like if you're really trying to force like quite a lot of shapes side by side. But it's the technique I rely on to match shapes because guide clumping just, I don't like it. I really don't like it. So let's do something like that. Let's get another guide in there. Have him link up with, for example, with you. dull from these angles. Let's get guide in there. This can be one of the guides that kind of pulls things back together. So let's get that. It still needs to be influenced by all the guides around it, because hair doesn't just ignore the hairs next to it. Like, at least on human hair. If you want like a cheat to kind of get hair to feel more natural, try having guides influence each other. So they kind of push and pull each other around. The way I always talk about it is like, imagine it like a stream. It's like you don't just get a random flow in a stream without it kind of pushing other bits of water around. And then I think this area will sort itself out. Down here should be fine. Question mark. Let's just do that. Let's try getting that. That looks better, I think. We need a guide up there. Oh yeah, guide here. Cool. And then we'll call that done. I don't want to spend too long focusing on that area because I'll come back to it later, not liking a single shape. So I always like to push through this sort of stuff, give myself time to decide I don't like it. Which actually is one of the reasons, like, coming back to this project after pretty much 2 months off it actually has kind of helped me out a bit in terms of seeing what isn't working. And like the entire environment and composition is what wasn't working for me, which is inconvenient. But I think we could get something out of that. So let's see if that works. Yeah, that's kind of better. I'll need more guides in the long run, up here even. That will start to get something that feels a bit nicer. So last test render before I move on. Then we can do a bit of blanket grooming, I guess, or curtain grooming even. No, I need to grab that bit as well. Still not keen on this silhouette. It needs a complete break. Cause I'm just getting more Mad Professor vibes than anything else, to be honest. It needs to have like a flick up to this or something to kind of sell it as not just going sideways and then down. Like this area works quite well because it's got that kind of overlap of forms, whereas this area doesn't have that at all. So we'll return to it though. I'm not going to stay on it now. So, curtain. Okay, so let me just quickly have a look. If I search curtain fur, am I going to get some weird results? What's the name like? It's fluffy burlap, I think. It isn't, is it? Although I do kind of love this, to be honest. This would make a really fun mini project, I think. Yeah, burlap. Fluffy burlap isn't a thing. Definitely don't want something like that. Yeah, not really. I've got something in my head, I just want visual confirmation of how it looks. because something I don't like doing too much is just kind of giving myself a safety net of like, there are people watching me work, so the last thing I want to do is like claim that I'm going to go for something, and then because I haven't shown an exact image, when I don't hit the target I was saying, I can just kind of play it off as like, oh, I was actually trying to do this all along. But if I show a picture, then I can be a bit more accountable for actually hitting the reference. And that's not really that good. I'm definitely not going to Google old sack, but that has the sort of fur that I'm looking for. But I don't want to Google old sack. Maybe I'll do that off screen. Let's quickly Google old sack off screen, and then if it's safe, I'll put it on screen. It is safe. Good. Although it's definitely not got what I was expecting to see. It's like a more woolly type thing. But I know searching wool, I'm just going to get the really... That's not at all what I was looking for. I'm just going to search fabric types. Right, fabric types. Jersey, no. That, whatever that is, old cardigan maybe would be a good thing. Old Cardi B, what the fuck? Why do enough people Google that for it to actually produce a result? Actually kind of impressive. Let's search for large images. I know someone who looks like that, and that's kind of funny to me. Right, I don't want to spend forever Googling. So if I can't find a reference I'm looking for, I'll block out a groom, and in the next stream kind of continue and refine based on the reference I can find. Why is Taylor Swift wearing a cardigan in summer? Do people read that shit? This is closer. I'm going to give that a go. Let's get that on the other screen. So, let's try, let's create a Yeti node of mesh. So, create Yeti node of mesh. This one will be prop. Prop curtain. My naming convention so far has been fur fuzzies, so I'm going to stick to it. I don't entirely know why I'm sticking to it, but I am. Cool. So, it's not what I want. Perfect. Absolutely no issues. So let's first get that scatter going a bit crazy. Let's go to 100. And we will render this at 10 times density as well. I'm not going to do any relax steps on this. And my grow is obviously too long, so let's just set that to like 0.01. That's definitely too short. 0.02. Something like that might work. Then add a good amount of length variation. We'll need a width on there to make it visually readable. It's gonna look crazy. I always love how these like really short wide hairs look. It's kind of cool. But yeah, so let's get a. Still hate that. There wouldn't be much taper on these, I think. So we'll do something like that, and so let's have the base parameter 0. Why not? Random width, stuff like that will be fine, and bring this all the way down. Let's go 0, 2. These are going to be a bitch to see, aren't they? Okay, so let's go. Let's just start with a crazy scraggle and see where that gets us. But no, let's not do that. Let's get a direction. And we're going to. What would be the best way to do this? I guess we could just give them a random direction. Which way is roll going exactly? That is kind of working. Okay, so we just need to decrease. Which axis is roll working on? It's just going side to side, isn't it? Okay. Is there a spin? Wait, direction random. If we had to get something like this and throw a curl into it, could do something maybe. We gonna need a lot more work than this though. So let's turn off maintain length. Turn root scraggle all the way down. Set you to a stupid frequency. 20 to 100. Maybe not 250. Starting to get there. 70. 100. Let's just do a quick test of the CV count. Okay, so it's not drastically changing as I increase that, so that's a good sign. 20 CVs is way too high. Let's go with 12, I don't know, 8. It is just a fuzz, so. Let's get a bit of a random on there. Let's have it on the effective percentage. That width is way too wide, isn't it? And let's just put that scatter up by 1. That scraggle's not working for me. Let's try doing a curl instead. Is that the one? Curl, yeah. I always hate curls, but sometimes I'm kind of forced to like them. Interesting that immediately broke. So if we turn root curl off, where's the radius? Where's the length, isn't that? Yeah. So length is the radius for whatever reason. Maybe it's not. This is why I hate. This is definitely why I hate these. So that's a strength. realize what I was doing wrong now. Cool. If we're doing this, we're gonna need a lot more CVs. Curls are brutal for CV counts. One thing I always like doing as well is adding a curl and a scraggle together. They tend to work quite well in combination. So can we get a random direction? Maintain length, that's not good, so. Okay. Okay, so that's how we do that. So how do we, what would be the correct way to invert that? Check if hash ID is less than 0.5. If so, do this. If so, if not, do minus 0.02. There we go. Nice thing about Yeti is it actually follows the same syntax as XGen, so you can do XGen expressions. You just need to know the names of rand and that sort of stuff. So like rand in Yeti is hash, and then rather than doing numbers like min and max and then a seed, you only have a seed. So hash is 0 to 1 no matter what. So you have to kind of mathematically move that around. So if you want 0 to 2, then you just do hash ID multiplied by 2. You can do all that sort of stuff. There is another thing you can use called pick, which allows you to pick integer values like at random. But that one, I've forgotten how to use it off the top of my head, but that one you still have to do a little bit of manipulation with it because it can only pick integers. So if you want decimals, you have to do like 0 to 1,000 and then divide it by 1,000 to get 0 to 1 with 3 decimal places or whatever. So let's do something like that. I'm going to decrease these a little bit. There we go. Do something like that. And then let's run the Scraggle. What happens if we run the Scraggle into that? Chaos. Let's just temporarily try giving a crazy CV count so we can see if it's actually chaos or if it's not enough CVs. Okay, so it's enough CVs. Okay. Combining coils with this is a really nice little thing. So now I want this to only be a percentage. So this is where Yeti could really do with an expression editor, because we have this working now, but if we want to do a percentage, then what we now have to do is put that in brackets, do another hash ID check, and put that there, and then put 0. So now we can turn off for a percentage. So that's a higher percentage. So let's try doing like 2% or 20% of hairs get this crazy coil. Let's go 40% maybe. There we go. I'm so curious as to how this will look. Probably really bad is the answer. Let's try giving that a render, just out of curiosity. We will need to assign a shader actually, so let's get a standard hair shader on that, and just set it to 0 melanin. So we need to graph view, and I'm just going to copy paste this name. And then for that, I should set Mel to 0 and leave everything else as default. Maybe add a bit of roughness. Let's just see how that looks. Still got an hour and a half of streaming left to do, so probably be able to revisit the hair before the end of this, because I'm definitely not going to be able to refine the curtain in that amount of time. No, this is going to be a bit crazy, isn't it? I need to get it to match closer to the colour of the actual curtain, because it doesn't make sense for it to not match the colour of the curtain. Although I do always like having white fuzzies on stuff. Let's just get a small section. The hairs are too thick, aren't they? Okay, so what I'm going to do is, rather than have absolutely ridiculously thin stuff in the viewport, I'm going to have the render time width be less. So let's go to like 0.2 of that. This is a cool project, mate. Can't wait to see the end result. Thanks, man. Glad you like it. That's looking a lot better. Also, welcome to the channel. Side note there. Yeah. Feel free to ask any questions, or if there's anything you want to see, or anything else you want to see in the project, just let me know. I'm happy to kind of take a detour for a bit. Should I try setting the density to be way higher? That kind of works. It's like almost working. Let's set this to be 10 times denser, just so we can rule it out. So this definitely looks cooler than, you know, without any groom. Groom's one of those things, it really separates like different types of work. Like if you have really good groom on a project, it can make it look so much more professional. Even if like you can have a very simple model with a very good groom, and it will always work. Like if you think of who would be a good example? I guess David Vircher would be a really good example. Like he's done a few like creature, like monster characters where their shapes in the model are quite simple. They're very well executed, but they're very simple models. But the grooms are really, really nice, like very clean, like they suit the character perfectly. So it makes them feel so professional. Okay, it's definitely struggling with 10 times density. Although it probably did just generate like a stupid amount of hair. So it makes sense. In fact, out of curiosity, what is my RAM usage right now? Performance. 25 gig of RAM. That's a heavy one. That's a really heavy one. Definitely more than we need to be using. 30 gig. Yeah, that's pretty heavy. Oh, there we go. I'm going to let that refine for a moment. Well, hello there. Hey Becca, how you doing? Yeah, 10 times density on the fur is absolutely 100% overkill. But maybe it'll look cool. Just going to let it continue to refine for a moment. I actually kind of like it, which troubles me. Troubles me a lot. Because it's excessively heavy, like it really doesn't need to be that heavy. We might just have to step down the CV count. What maybe it can do. So here's like an interesting kind of topic for discussion, I guess, is when you've got to achieve something that is intense to render, there's always a way to shortcut it. So in the case of this, you know, I'm doing, I can find out the fur count, I'll find out in a moment. So I'm doing a stupid amount of hair. I'm guessing about 2 to 3 million curves, which at the CV count that I've got is overkill for a curtain. Ultimately, it's a fucking curtain. I don't need that many curves or that many gig to render. So there's a few ways I could approach it. I could go the route of shortcut it completely and do some shader work on the actual curtain and only use the groom to do strays. That's one way. It's not the way I'm going to do though, because this project I'm trying to be a bit obsessive about doing things quote unquote correctly, which is completely a bullshit term, but it's the one I'm using in my head. So what I can do instead is, if I want everything to be groom, I can separate the groom into 2 different things. I can do a groom that's for the strays that need the CV count to be quite high, so I can get the curl and scraggle and all that stuff. I can create a second groom in the same Yeti node, because you know Yeti's quite nice with that, and I can use that second groom to be the short filler stuff and have it be like a quarter the amount of CVs, because it doesn't need all the coil, it doesn't need all this extra shit. It just needs to fill the space. That could save me potentially millions, like tens of millions of CVs, which really mounts up how quickly that sort of stuff saves time. I'm going to do a very short, because I do quite like the effect it's giving. Also, if anyone ever wonders why when you're doing fabrics you're supposed to do like a sheen effect, like why Arnold materials, the render monitors, have that sheen, and why people use sampler info and ramps, this is why. Fabrics do have a lot of loose fibers on them, so towards the edges they catch a lot more light, so they kind of have more of a glow, so this gives a sampler info look. Ultimately that's the physical reason why people do that. Just a little tidbit of information there for you. I kind of like the way this looks, so I'm going to pull it back. Let's do a test. Let's see how many curves we're generating first. So we're doing a render density of 100 times. So this scatter tells me we have 44,000 hairs, so that means 100 times more. We have 4.4 million hairs on that curtain, which is stupid. So what we can do, I'm going to save my scene, and then I'm going to alt save. So I'm going to step this down in CV count, and that will save a bit, because 50 is overkill. 50 is absolutely overkill. So let's step that down to about 24. And that barely made any difference, but that will half the amount of CVs in the scene. So that will make it twice as easy to render for the computer. And then to kind of go on top of that, we can create another scatter. So let's set you to be 10 times less dense. Cool. Now let's create another grow, which goes up here. Let's throw you all the way at the end. So I was getting myself a bit confused there. There we go. So this one, if the last one's just been made 10 times less dense, this one needs to be 9 times more dense. So overall we've got the same amount of hair. We've got 900 of this type. In fact, I'm gonna go down. I'm gonna set it to 800. Set this one to 200. So overall they add up to 1,000, which is the original density. These ones, I will make them less CVs. So I will give these, let's say 12, and these will not be able to achieve the crazy curls. I'll also make them a little bit shorter, just so we can get a bit more of that stray effect. then what I'm going to do from there, they can probably share this guy, I think. So I'm going to copy paste him. If we try to do the curl with these, it's going to look really bad. So I'm going to basically copy paste. They need to be in that order. Copy paste that. And then I can merge these together. So let's create a merge on you. And then plug you into there. So now I've got the original amount of hair. So overall it will look the same, but I've got way less CVs, like way less CVs. I could if I wasn't a fucking idiot, I'd be able to figure out how many more CVs we used to have. But my brain is not in the mode of doing maths. But we've saved, you know, at least, I mean, we had 50 CVs with 4 million hairs, so 50, I'm that much of an idiot, I'm gonna Google it. So 4.4 million, so 0 times 50. So we used to have approximately 22 million hairs. I should have been able to do it in my head. 22 million CVs, sorry. Now we've got at very least half that, and we've got some that half of that as well. So we're probably at about, we've gone from 22 million to around 5 million in total CVs. And CV is the important bit. That's the bit that, you know, takes up your RAM, because that's the bit that's doing all the work. So I'm going to now do a bit of a further out render. Let's get the character in there a little bit. I'm going to do a test render with that. So hopefully we'll also notice that we've got less RAM usage. So let's get that up as well. Task manager. And let's just go to performance, memory. I mean, it's still cache, so we might not actually see a difference. I'm not entirely sure how that works, to be honest. Let's just do that. So if it reaches 30 gig again, then we know we've fucked up somewhere. So we just saved, in theory, 9 gig of RAM, which on a machine with 64 gig of RAM, that's not like huge, because obviously I already had like enough RAM to handle the project. But on a project where you've got a lot more stuff going on, if you've got a lot more effects caches going on in the background, that 9 gig could be the difference between being able to render a shot and not being able to render a shot. So splitting stuff out can really be helpful. I quite like the look that fur was getting, so hopefully we've kept it. Obviously it's not what I was originally aiming for, so I'm curious to whether or not I want to kind of do another pass to try to get that. So got that bit. But yeah, so that's 9 gig of saved RAM. So that's a really good improvement. I mean, hell, it's a third better than it was, which means that the curtains were most of the scene in terms of RAM, which is kind of hilarious to me. But this is working quite well. I kinda want to keep the white shading of the fur. See, it has quite an interesting look to it. It's also got a very mild clumping effect, which isn't intentional. Kind of like it. I should probably get some clumps in there, shouldn't I? Although I'd absolutely be overdoing it if I do that, so maybe not. So let's go back to the camera angle we were rendering with a little while ago. Because ultimately we'll be rendering a close-up for the end of this session. So something like there is where it was. I'm going to throw on, what's the distance of this? So that's 18 units away, so let's just back out a little bit. So now it's 19.3. So let's go in Arnold, enable that field. It was 19, right? So I'm just going to set it to 19. Aperture size somewhere around there. Aperture blades, let's go with a 5 blade. I always like little pentagons. And let's give that a render. Oh yeah, bigger is more blurry. Definitely too blurry. Let's step that back a bit. Let's go about 0.2 and go for a low angle. I'm going to leave that refining for a moment. So once this is done a little bit of refining, because I just want to take a break for a moment. So once this is done refining, we can kind of go back onto his hair and see if we can figure out how to get the silhouette to look good, because currently it looks it's just too straight. It's really boring. So we'll see if we can fix that. In terms of, what's the word I'm looking for right now? Yeah, I mean, does anyone have any questions, anything they want to kind of ask or get an opinion on, or is there anything, you know, does anyone have any feedback for the project? That's also helpful. As long as it's not too fundamental, because I can't really bother going back all the way to, you know, the base model of anything. But if anyone has like look demo room notes, then by all means throw them out and I can have a quick look at them. The more I look at this reference, the more I'm realizing the shirt is probably quite a nice reference as well, because the shirt on my guy is pretty simple at the moment. Like, it really doesn't have much going on. The shirt on this guy has like this really cool bobbly knit material thing. I should probably get my monster into the shot, shouldn't I? Yeah, let's get, sorry, let's just kill this for a moment and then get my monster visible. Let's just see how that looks. Oh, let's go for the full thing. Give that a moment to do its thing. Yeah, I think that hair's a nice addition. I feel like it should move slightly because it feels too, I don't know, it feels like it's too far back potentially. It would maybe look better if it was like here instead. Can't really tell. Oh yeah, fuck. I need to figure out my, okay, I'm gonna undo that. Square brackets. Okay, so full bracket. Let's just have a quick. So switch camera to render cam. We can just region render like a slice of it. I'm just gonna let it go over a quick pass. In context, actually, this isn't as offensive to me as I thought it would be. When we're at like, you know, the final distance, because this, something like this, and in fact, let me just get something like that's going to be my final crop. So I do need to figure out this because that feels too much like a fringe. I need to get this to look a bit more interesting. There's also an issue of like the wood behind this braid is visible, which I'm not too keen on. Let's just isolate this bit. Let that render. But yeah, so that sounds like a good workaround, having two systems. The curtain almost looks like a wool felt, which is cool and kind of works with the character. That's good. Maybe I can keep with the wool felt thing then. I'm not sure yet. We'll see. But yeah, what was I going to say? I need to darken outside of region. There we go. No, didn't mean to do that. There we go. Let that refine for a moment. But yeah, so I need to figure out an environment for this guy. Like what I'm going to do in the background. Because I do have a basic environment modeled, but I just don't want. Let me just hold scene updates. Oh, that's not what I want. Fuck off. I'm going to go back to perspective. Cool. So I do have an environment modeled. I'm going to have to mute. There we go. So yeah, like the current thing that we had going, do I actually have any renders of this guy? I will do on Facebook. Let me just go grab an image. Because there'll be a few people watching right now who don't know the overall project. So I'm just going to get that. Let's go into photos, your photos. So the latest render of the full project is, let me just not bring my entire Facebook over, that would be bad. Open image, new tab. So that's the latest render we did. Obviously, you know, Groom's massively out of date, and we've added quite a lot around it. Same with this guy. But the original idea was kind of going for, this is based on a sketch by a guy called Ken Mortensen, who did this. It's from a book called StickyMonsters. Basically, he's a children's TV director who he does little sketches of monsters on Post-it notes, and they look really, really fucking cool. In fact, my girlfriend for our anniversary bought me an actual copy of this book. It's really interesting. Although this image is actually one of the only ones he's done that's not in the book, which is kind of funny. But yeah, so like I wanted to kind of find a way to kind of make this. It's a bit too surreal for, like, obviously there's not much information in it. Like, it gives you a general design, but it doesn't really give you much information visually, because it's, you know, it's just a Post-it note sketch. It's not going to have tons of detail and rendering. So I thought I'd go for something, like try to do something else with it, which is why I'm doing it as miniatures. And one of the things I was going to try to go for is have this idea of it being like a writer's like page kind of come to life. So like if I maybe have the paper glow a little bit to kind of imply that this isn't supposed to be there, this isn't natural. Like this grass maybe could look quite cool with like a little ramp of glow going up it or something. But the general idea is to have, you know, be on a writer's desk. One of the small things I was going to do is put like little groom tutorials on the Post-it notes and that sort of stuff. Like, you know, make it feel like it's someone's desk. But the more I work on this, the more I'm thinking, one, I don't really want to make all this stuff, but it doesn't really work like conceptually yet. Like it's kind of interesting, but it's not. It would be good for a different project, not for this guy and this thing. It would work a lot better with something else, and I'm really not sure what it will work better with. Like I don't know what I should add. Like as an environment, what should go with this scene? Because, you know, I don't want to just throw this stuff away just to replace it with an idea that's not good, or worse, you could argue. Not entirely sure. It's just not quite working for me yet. I feel like I could probably make it look cool, but not conceptually like marry it together, if you know what I mean. So I kind of want to replace the background, but I don't know what to replace it with, because obviously I've committed to the miniature aesthetic. Like everything's built. There's a wooden skeleton inside. Oh, didn't mean to hit G. There's a wooden skeleton inside this guy. Obviously he's missing his arms, but like things like the legs, no. Like there is like little stuff in there. Like he's built to be like a little puppet basically. The arms were modelled as like a proxy mesh. I never actually did the skeleton stuff for that, but it's like it'd be too late to go back on stuff like this because the character's already pretty much done. Like he's just in the detailing phase now, so I need to stay committed to that. General approach to the characters, but I can still change the background. So would it potentially be worth me switching to like a little fantasy world that's also modeled as miniature? Like if I can figure out maybe he's walking through a little town, or maybe he's coming back from like a school talent show or something, and he's disappointed he didn't win with his monster friend that he's got in a box. Like, just something like that sort of stuff. I mean, that could be kind of cute, but I don't know how to sell that in a single image. Because just putting a banner in the background that says school talent show cancelled would be too on the nose. I need to speak to people who actually have good ideas, because I don't really have those. They're pretty rare for me. But yeah, I mean, if you guys have any ideas as to what could sell this, then by all means suggest it. But I'm just not 100% convinced anymore by this environment. Like, I used to quite like the idea, but as time's gone on, I don't really like it, which is a shame, because I quite like some of the assets I made. Like, I do quite like the candy wrappers, which, because I'm really anal about doing things for this project in a physically correct way, is actually a wrapped piece, which took way more time than it should have done. So it's like, I kind of do want to keep this stuff, but there's no point keeping it just to show I can do it. Like, it's not the point of doing CG work. So I'm really not sure where to go on that. I do quite like the paper idea, like that this is written, because one of the things I did want to do is reach out to John Mortensen and ask him if he can sign a piece of paper and send me a scan, because then I could use that like on this. I could actually like put the original guy who drew the concept that inspired this. It'd be cool to get something from him in there. First person view with a hand or hands to show size. What, as if someone's building it? Yeah, it could kind of work. The problem is I've gotten quite. I'm pretty married at this point to the camera angle, partially because it's what's in the reference. Probably delete this cap reference now, right? Because I didn't actually end up going for that. But yeah, it's like I do want to keep the same camera angle as this. So I mean, I could put a hand here, but then I'm still committed to this writer's desk thing. And really, if this was physically being built, there'd have to be something to hold this creature up, because there's no way you'd be able to have strong enough supports here for all the weight that's forward. So it's kind of like I could get away with a lot with the writer's idea, because it's a writer's idea coming to life. It doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to be built correctly in a way that is physically possible. So I could get away with little artistic licenses, but granted, you can get away with artistic license on any project, but it's kind of the point. But I don't know. I need to render it so high res for this curtain to look good. I still need to fix this. This hair looks so funny. It feels like when David Beckham had long hair and he put his hairband up. This is what this feels like to me, which is not what I want for this creature. I'm still not entirely sure as well what I want this creature to feel like. Do I want it to feel scary, or do I want it to be pretty chill, like just his friend? Like, because his reaction isn't that of startle. Like, his reaction is just completely being fucking done. Like, it's the same in this. Like, he doesn't look even remotely afraid or confused. He's just had a long day, which I tried to get with this. I don't know if I hit that note successfully. But if this monster's there, then there has to be a reason that he's not shocked. Like, it has to be mundane for him. So could it be a friend, or could it be that he's just constantly fucking haunted, so he doesn't care anymore? Because if it's a constant haunting thing, I have license to make this feel really scary. If it's a friend, then I can kind of give it a nicer tone. Because I haven't fully committed to any of those yet. Like, I've added little things, like, there's this black fluid leaking out the eye, which you can just about make out. which is more of a horror element, but obviously I never committed to it enough. It feels like a devil on the shoulder. Yeah, it kind of does. It has a conversational feel to it, which I need to play into in some way. Like for the final projects to look good, I need to play into that, conversational feel that they have together. I just don't know how to go about that, because the environment will be what ties that together. To be honest, that's why I'm so concerned about the environment. Is it's not gonna be, not anything would work, which is why I'm kind of abandoning that background environment thing. And obviously the concept art, there isn't an environment, there is grass, and that is it. Which obviously we could use that as he's walking in a lawn, he's walking in a field, he's walking in a forest, he's walking up towards a bridge. He could be fucking busking, and this is just like a public park or some shit. Like, it's so many things he could be. It's very frustrating. I might send this to a couple concept art friends and just be like, make this work. Like, if I send them this picture and say, sketch an environment, what do you come out with? Obviously pay them. It's a sketch, so it wouldn't be paid much, but either way, just get some idea people going. And get something visual, because I'm not a concept artist. Like, I'm able to take an image like this and make something kind of cool out of it, but I'm not able to thematically come up with really cool stuff. It's not what my skill set is. I'm a groom artist first, shading artist second, and modeling third. I'm not a concept art guy in the slightest. I'm also wondering if actually having this curtain come forward was the right idea, because I did want it to blast forward a little bit, but actually now I'm looking at this, I'm like, maybe it would be better for it to slide to the side. Although the way it is drawn kind of doesn't make sense fur wise. Like, you'd have something dragging back, which this works better with. So I don't know what to do. This is nice and clean now. I'm gonna, while we continue to chat, I'm gonna boost the resolution. Give us a second to do his thing. I mean, what references that I could look into? I could look at Leica films and see what they have. It's hard to tell if it's actually rendering or not. There we go. Oh, definitely want that environment gone. Give that a few passes just so it gets stuff there. This is a stupid resolution to render at. I feel like this session's kind of naturally come to an end at this point though. Which I'm feeling lazy. I need to do something. Alright, fuck it. We're committing to doing some hair changes. So I'm getting too, not mopey. Mopey's not the right word. And not demotivated either, because I'm feeling pretty good about the project. I just need to do something that's cool. Like, this should move forward as well. Small thing, but that will help, I think. Right, so that's that refreshed. Cool. So, what's working? Hey Jacob, how's it going, man? We're just chatting about basically restarting the entire environment for this project. Feel free to skip backwards if you want to see that stuff. Because thematically, the environment's not working for me right now. Coming off the project for a couple of months and going back to it has really pulled the wind out the sails of the whole writer's desk thing. It feels too gimmicky. And I've already done like 100 odd hours on this project, so I may as well add another 50 for the environment, you know? What do we need? I feel like we probably need a lot of this stuff, like this chaos breakup, like all along the top of the back. Like have it straight here, but have it kind of at least a couple guides crazy back here. Let's do that, because that gives us time to coast along, doing something that's constructive while also considering what to go forward with. To me, the creature looks like it belongs in a swamp, natural environment at least. Could be miniature modelled, as you mentioned. Yeah, it's a case of composition, because I don't just want to do like a random environment. Like I want it to have some kind of theme to it, because the old one was like writers' stuff coming to life. One of the ideas, which would be way too on the nose to actually execute in any way in one image, but would be like coming back from like a little talent show type thing, because he looks done, and that's not an expression you have for this type of monster. So it's like, I need him to have, well, I want him to have something that's let him down that I'd be able to tell in an image. And I don't want to do like loads of characters, so I don't want to do something like, you know, other kids laughing at him because he's got this weird monster friend. Because one character's enough. I'd rather do one well executed character than like 50 average looking characters. We need to make sure these aren't all repeating the same shape. Let's have that do something like, yeah, I'm also trying to think like who I can send this to who's like a great ideas person. Because I know a few that are like really, really good at coming up with cool ideas. But I know a few others that are really great at coming up with designs. And it's like, ultimately I'm doing in a single image. So people who come up with really great designs are just as helpful as people who come up with entirely great stories. And I'm enjoying doing the character work. Ultimately, in the end, like I'm pretty happy with how this character's turned out, so if I end up not liking this project, I can just do character renders. But it would feel like a letdown to do that. Because ultimately that's what my FK Twigs project ended up being, right? It's like, we spent all this effort making a nice asset, but I never actually did anything to make it look cool. Like, I just made it a decent looking asset, but I didn't put effort into giving it a believable environment and a story. Whereas this project, it's kind of the point of it, is like getting that story element. So I want to not just get lazy and not do that in the end. Curious how stuff like that interacts. Yeah, stuff like that just adds so much. Like, it's so important to add interactions between objects in grooms. It's so important. It's something that always startles me, because like I feel like I know groom, and then I do that and like I didn't realize how much my groom was missing until I did it. Like I know about it and I don't at the same time. It's very strange. It's literally just adding a guide. Like, it's not even doing any complex modifier work. I'm just throwing some guides in and matching them to a surface. and just making sure they have an interesting curl to them. I feel like this guide here needs to have something, because otherwise that guide next to him doesn't make sense. I just need to fix the hat model, because on both sides of the head... Oh wait, no, is it just intersecting, or is it actually a glitch in the model? Oh, it's just intersecting, okay, I'll need to fix that. This side I want to be fairly well kept. I mean, literally no one will ever see this side of the head, because it's only going to be rendered from this angle, ultimately. I'm not doing... I was thinking of doing like a still with a little bit of movement in terms of like, you know, a little bit of wave to the hair or something with a curtain, or a moving camera at least with a bit of dust, but I'm not going to do renders from like this angle because the pose isn't built for that. Like, look at that arm. Like it's built to be looked at this angle. The asset would hold up if I put it back in T-pose. That asset would hold up at all angles, but the pose would not, because I'm not good at posing. It's very forced, and some parts of the simulation don't work really. Like some parts of the cloth sim I did don't really work well enough for that. Although small thing, I do love that you can see like where the little arm socket is on the cloth sim. You can't really see it in. You can kind of see it there. It's like a little bump for his arm socket. I love stuff like that. It's nice, but yeah, overall it doesn't work as well from all angles. Let's get a guide. Where would be a good one to go? I guess up here. And resample use 12 CVs. It can't follow that because it's too samey. And it can't just mirror that shape either, so we need to do something a bit crazy with this one. We're kind of trapped here because there's a lot of simplicity around it, so it has to do something silly. Otherwise it will not look in the slightest bit good. But it still needs to be influenced by everything. It's such a fucking dumpster fire, this area. We need something to really tie it together. That kind of works because it's trying to follow, but then it's flicking the other way, so it's not mirroring anything. That kind of works. That might be okay. I'm going to need a guide in there. I've just realised. Let's mask you out. Guide in there. Mask you in. Sculpt. What do we do? Let's not do that. There we go. That's better. This guide isn't working for me anymore though. This is one of the things about guide work I've always said. Like I've taught, at this point I've taught quite a few people how to do guides with, you know, a decent amount of depth. And one of the things that a lot of people try to do, and I say a lot, one of the things that most people try to do is like get each guide perfect as they go. Like they try way too hard to make the first guide like just right, and they'll spend like, you know, once they get the importance of guides, they'll spend too long on the guides. And one of the things to kind of learn is that you need to accept that your first few passes are going to be complete dog shit. It really helps a lot to accept it and just move on. So like, you know, I'll play some guides, and the first one, you know, I try to get it vaguely right. I mean, the first guide does have to be right in terms of get roughly the right length and direction. But beyond that, you don't need to get perfect shapes. So often what I'll do is when I'm building guides, I'll just play shit around. And then, you know, I'll tweak it for maximum a minute per guide, and I'll move on, because I know that later on when I add all this directional stuff, I'm going to realize which ones don't work. Like this guy, I feel like I'm going to have to make a choice soon as to what he's doing, because he's fighting this one. He's kind of following this guy, but not quite. Like it's not really the same thing. This one's mirroring it as well, so all the shapes around it are just not matching this guy. So he needs to do something, but I don't know what. That's the point, is I have no fucking clue, and I don't care. Like, you know, just get used to throwing your guides around, make something look interesting. Maybe, hell, like, fuck it, let's just have this guy go up. Let's just have a complete swirl. Like, you can draw a oversized, like, question mark shape, like backwards question mark shape here. Is that what backwards? No, it's not backwards. I'm an idiot. You can draw like a slightly diagonal question mark shape in the flow here. And that could look really cool. It could look like shit as well. Who knows? We won't know for a while. But adding that sort of stuff just makes grooms feel so much better. And it's so important. Like, it's something I really struggle to convey it in a way that's not like a mini rant, which I feel like I'm doing right now. But we've got 7 people watching. I posted this to 10,000 hours, so there will be at least a few people who aren't regulars, like, to the streams. So, like, you probably haven't heard me rant about this stuff, so you're not bored of it yet, I hope. But everyone who's been coming here for a while will probably be bored of me having this rant. Having this hair do that now means that this guy needs to do something interesting. Him. He needs to do something really cool. Or he can completely reverse this. So let's go with that, because that sounds like more fun. So I'm just going to have this and just do the complete inverse. I'm going to have him curl up that way. And doing something like that, hopefully, for the sake of having just done it and me ranting about this for a while, having these two fight each other is going to hopefully produce something that looks kind of cool. There we go. Completes an S shape. And that sort of stuff is so fun. Like, it really makes grooms look cool, at least in my opinion. This area is too straight, so let's get that sorted. And he's the reason, this guy here. So let's get him with a bit more interest to him. That guy, he needs to do that. So now saying guys need to look good from a surprising amount of angles, this is what I mean. This guide here needs to have something more interesting to it, which actually makes it then fit this shape more. So that now this one's going to be out of place. It's a ricochet effect, not ricochet, a domino effect. You fix one thing and it makes something else, it makes you realize how bad something else looks. It's kind of working. That angle's not great, but then we're never going to see this angle, so I don't really care. We should fix this area, shouldn't we? Because it's two directional. Right, we need to get some short strays in there as well. That's one of the things I mentioned earlier, so let's get that in. What am I doing right now? What is that? There we go. So we're going to need another scatter. So we need to arrange all this. These are my chunky strays. These are my regular groom. And then I'm going to have a short stray. So let's arrange them based on like chunkiness, basically. Put these down here. Actually, no, I should go about that. And let's just grab you. So lock density 100, 1000. Yeah, that'll do. Grow. Let's go with in length about there. Lots of variation. Length multiplier. Let's go 0.1. Yeah, that's about right. Then we should comb him using our guides just there. I mean, technically we could comb this using the guides here, but I'm not going to do that. Let's get a scraggle and a width. Fix you about there, you about there. Get a bit of randomness in this guy. 0.01 or 0.02, no, 0.002. Might be okay. Scraggle, let's reduce the width, or the base even, frequency. And scraggle random. So let's now merge that into everything else. So I'm just going to create a merge after you. Oh, you've not been reactivated yet. Let's create a merge after you. And then, oh, that's a guide. Don't want that. Let's create a merge. There you are. Cool. And then drag you all the way over here. Connect you up. Oh, wrong one. Second input. So what these hairs are now going to do is just add a little bit of something at the base of the hair. They'll be a little bit thicker than the regular hairs. I'm going to increase that density a little bit. So let's set that's like 5,000. So 5 times more density, maybe not a little bit. And that will just add a little bit of something. You can also get a little bit more length in there, I think. So let's add 2. And that will feel a little bit more real now. Do you know a way to randomize a texture like mad floorboards? Or mad some floorboards and made some still getting tile feel. Oh god, there was a way. What was I gonna say? So one thing you can do, and I don't know if this works because I literally just come up with it now, so it might not work. If you create a checkerboard which is tiled the exact same amount as your textures, and use that to mask 2 different tile textures together, that could potentially work. Then get some like 3D noise on top of it, just to add a little bit of distortion or bit of discoloration. That might be enough to kind of get it to do what you want. Potentially, I don't know. I have no idea. Perspective 2, let's just do a test render with this guy. Let's get rid of view, test res. And let's, for the sake of speed, hide the monster boy. The usual way that I break up tile textures is using fractals. Like I'll add dirt on top that isn't tiled the same amount. Or you can add, depending on the type of tile texture you're doing, you can add things like a fractal to the rotate UV slot in your place 2D node, and that will just kind of slightly jitter your texture as it moves. And because it's based on a different tiled amount, it isn't consistent. It doesn't repeat in the same way that your texture does. So it can look pretty decent. I'm gonna rename this camera. Where is it? Yeah, there it is. Render cam. Close up. I'm just gonna lock attribute. Okay, so it's 25 to 11, so I'm gonna leave this rendering. I might tweak the strays at the base of his hair, depending on how that comes out. Let that do its thing. Should this hair be longer? I feel like it might be drawing too much attention to itself if it's longer. But at the same time, it's not the length of his hair, like, in the slightest. No, I'm not going to make it longer because it would be drawing too much attention to itself. It's already drawing a fair amount of attention, but in a somewhat believable way at least, so I'm going to leave it alone. I have 8 different textures, wanted to randomize them. AI jitter does, but using textures. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a way directly to do it. I know that RenderMan has it. It's like the multi-tile or something. You can tile multiple images together. But I don't know if Arnold has a way to do it. I mean, I guess I can help you Google it. Because I'm waiting on a render right now anyway. So, Arnold multiple tiled textures. So that's for 3ds Max, so let's not. Stacking textures, that sounds like it might be. Oh, 5 years ago, maybe not. And it's also the wrong software, never mind. Wait, Arnold? And that was 3ds Max? What? Oh, no, that was, let's mute that. That's Cinema 4D. Did Cinema 4D have Arnold like 5 years ago? Oh, he's saying that he wants to do that the way he used to. Okay, that makes sense. That's V-Ray. And you might be able to look at tutorials in different softwares because a lot of them will use Maya nodes, and obviously Arnold supports, I believe it supports every Maya node, so that might be an option for you. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. I feel like I need to add more strays to the scarf. Let's just quickly do that. Prop scarf. Why is that stacked up like that? %50 more. I'm gonna play some guitar after this before it gets too late. The temptation to add fur to the shirt is really high. Yes, he makes it so easy. Like, as far as I'm concerned, Yeti is the easiest tool just for quickly adding fur to objects. X-Gen is not as easy as this. Alright, well, I think I'm going to end the stream. I'll give it 5 minutes, because I'm literally just waiting on a render to finish at this point. It's not, I mean, not that these streams are entertaining, but it's not particularly entertaining to watch someone in silence watch a render go. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to kind of stick around and answer a few little things. If no one has any questions, then I'll probably just end the stream and go play some games and play a bit of guitar or something. I don't know if I'll be streaming again on Saturday. Weekends are kind of up in the air now that I've moved house. Because we are close to Becca's family now, so chances are I'll see those guys on weekends. Keep that little bubble and all that sort of stuff. But you know, Tuesdays and Thursdays I'll be continuing to stream at this point, and then hopefully I'll stream on Saturday as well. But I can't guarantee it. But yeah, so in terms of what we'll do in the next stream, honestly no idea. I need to figure out what I'm going to do for the environment, because I feel like that's the most pressing issue at the moment. There's no point me refining fuzzies on curtains when an entire aspect to the, you know, half the project is missing. So we'll figure that out. But yeah, I'll get back on streaming on a very latest Tuesday, I guess. And yeah, I'll wait for a few minutes. If anyone has any questions, then you can type them up. If not, then enjoy your evenings, all that sort of stuff, and hopefully see you at the next stream as well. Cool. Well, I guess there's no questions, so I'm going to head off, guys. Enjoy the rest of the evenings. Hopefully see you on either Saturday or Tuesday, depending on when I'm next streaming. Enjoy evenings. Bye-bye.